Ready to resume.
Ready?
Mr. President, okay, we've resumed. Thank you. Mr. President, with the indulgence of the sponsor, and with the indulgence, I would like to ask clarificatory questions because some of my possible amendments may not be necessary with the clarifications. For the record, in the interest of time, my staff has also met with your staff, I understand, and with DOH. So we're pretty much aligned, Mr. President, nothing heavy. But I feel some of my questions, though they may not need actual amendments, they would be useful for the guidance of the implementing agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. President.
So, Mr. President, I'll go page by page, not necessarily line by line. I'm okay with page 1. On page 2, there's a mention of care center. It's not a defined term, but it is elaborated in the next section, and it's a short bill, so I think it's okay. No need to include that definition there. Unless, and I leave it up to the chairman, subject to style. Would you like to say a care center as defined in section 5? But it's up to the chairman. It's not a major. So to be clear, page care center. Easy. To insert word care center, add the phrase as defined in section 5.
Yes. Yes,
So
Mr.
moved.
President. I accept, Mr. President.
There being no objection and accepted by the sponsor, the amendment is approved.
Thank you. And then, Your Honor, on the definition of terms, we have letter B, under section 3, letter B and letter C, refer to mental health associate and mental health specialist respectively. We note that the mental health associate are basically bachelor degree holders, while letter C, which refers to mental health specialists are referred to mental health specialist plantilla positions in the DepEd who shall have qualified pursuant to either the provisions of RA 9258 or RA 10029. And these basically are professionals who have a master's degree. Is that correct?
Yes, master's degree and license, Mr. President.
So yung sa bachelors, they are not necessarily licensed.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, I'm fine as long as that's clear to, again, the implementing agencies and of course the schools, no? Okay, I move on. We're on page 3, section 4. So section 4, I would say, is the meat of the bill.
Yes.
And this is where it states that the school-based mental health program is hereby institutionalized, and this is it. To do what? To promote and ensure the mental health and well-being of all learners in public and private schools, including out-of-school children. Okay. And then the second sentence goes on to say the program shall promote mental health awareness, number 1. And to manage the mental health concerns of all learners, including the prevention of suicides in school. So am I correct in understanding that there are 2 components? Promoting mental health awareness and 2, addressing the mental health concerns.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay.
Correct.
I would think, and I'd like to know if His Honor agrees, the promoting mental health awareness in a way is probably the easy part because this is basically an information campaign.
Yes.
So as long as we develop that program, then it's just presented and rolled out all over the country.
Correct,
Is that
Mr.
correct?
President.
Okay. And I'd like to put on record, I'm not sure if there, but actually insert a provision. But what constitutes mental health awareness, and what would those interventions be? Because to my mind, these are programs that, number one, gives everybody in the environment an understanding of what mental health is, and then number two, the programs or interventions not yet on a case-to-case basis, but basically to ensure that, I think the second part that I mentioned is still part of the mental health awareness and not yet part of the managing the mental health concerns. Would that be correct? Do I understand, in other words, do I understand correctly that the phrase managing mental health concerns would already be a case-to-case intervention, or the program? So to be clear, I'll give an example. If I meant in sports, raises the level of happiness, raises a person's mental well-being, does that fall on one or two?
That will fall on one, Mr.
One.
Mr.
That's what I
President.
thought also.
Well,
So,
Mr.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, Mr. President, Her Honor is correct that there are two major components of the program, which is to promote mental health awareness and manage mental health concerns. And this ties up to Section 6, letter B.
Okay.
And letter B talks about skills and information for prevention, identification, skills that will be developed for learners. So, in other words, the learners themselves will be part of the promotion of mental health, Mr. President. And then the manage is a form of intervention, and that ties up also with Section 6, letter C, which is facilitate the efficient referral for appropriate intervention and provision of adequate aftercare support, and so on, Mr. President. So we tied up, and the functions are laid out in the functions of the care center, Mr. President. So we tied it up together.
Because actually, Mr. President, in letter B, and thank you, I appreciate that. In letter B, I agree with His Honor that it says the care center, these are the functions of the care center, no? Equip the learner with skills and information. So the learner is empowered, right?
Yes, Mr.
So
President.
this is where I love these existing programs already, where you have these peer support groups.
Yes.
Because these are empowered young people, and a lot of them are church-based, school-based, community-based, where they acknowledge that as young people, they need the support. They've gotten programs from, I hope, most, the ones I've heard of, they come from their well-developed programs, either provided by NGOs or the church system, whatever. So then these young people are now equipped, no,
Yeah.
to pass it on, to use the information among their peer groups and even pass it on. But that same section B goes on to say, hold on, and refer for their, so wait, equip the learners with skills and information for prevention, identification, proper response, and referral for their own and others' mental health needs. What does that mean, Your Honor, when say and referral? Because that gives me the impression that they'll refer it to a specialist, when
Yes.
my understanding of letter B was still mostly in response to the awareness, where they're creating their own program.
Well, Mr. President, Her Honor is absolutely correct in the peer support. In fact, our experts were telling that the first step, to simplify things, the first step is for our learners to know how to detect mental health issues, and the learners have their own sort of group,
Support system.
support
Yeah.
system, support group that they can talk about it.
Yes.
Because typically learners don't go immediately to their teachers, don't go
Exactly.
immediately to
The
their
parents.
to the parents. They talk among themselves. So this is the type of skills or information that our mental health specialists will be teaching our learners in order for them to respond and be aware of this type of conditions. What's important for our learners is to know where to refer it to.
Okay.
So in this particular case, to our mental health specialist or mental health associate, as a case may be.
Okay, so it's clearer now. So that's still part of the awareness, because part of the awareness is to know where to
Yes,
refer.
correct.
Okay,
Yes, correct,
thank you.
Mr. President.
That's very clear, Your Honor. I always admire His Honor, our chairman, with how thorough he is, having hours and hours of hearings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, I also
Well-
learned from the experts, because we invited experts, that what is being envisioned here is not a medical intervention.
It's
So,
not.
It's not a medical
That-
intervention.
that's going to be my part 2 question. But I think, can we, our Deputy Minority Floor Leader, I think, has an intervention.
Yes, Deputy Minority Floor Leader. Sir.
Salamat kayo, Mr. President, and thanks to the indulgence of the good gentlewoman from Taguigan, Pateros, and the good sponsor. Just an addition to the line of questioning now of Her Honor, paalala ulit dun sa mga deliberations on and the substance of the mental health law, may papel din pong binibigay sa mga peer counseling groups. So similar dun sa pag-uusapan ng Your Honors about groups of students, groups of friends, mga barkada, pati po peer counseling groups who, like the mental health associates, could also serve as, kumbaga, force multipliers for the mental health specialists on campus. So yun lang po. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President,
Thank
and
you.
to the colleagues on the floor.
And clearly, it's a standard, Your Honor, as the Deputy Minority Floor Leader has pointed out. No, we're not veering away from the standards that have been set by our previous law. So I'll go back, Your Honor, as we were dissecting this section B. I'm fine with that, Your Honor. I'll go back to the previous page because we made that reference in connection with the earlier section I was going through. And then when we get there, I might make an amendment there, Your Honor. So, okay, so then I'll go on to the second paragraph of section 4, starting in line 19. And it says there, the program shall be developed in consultation with learners, their parents, and parent substitute, and then implemented by DepEd. So I really appreciate this because now it's clear that the program is learner-centered. It is not a program just handed by DOH or mga psychiatrists. It's the kids who will dictate what works for them. Once the level of awareness has been created and they know that there is such, in the same way, Your Honor, now after COVID, di ba, alam na ng mga bata, magmask ka pag inuubo ka. They're very conscious with not blowing your nose or coughing in public without proper protective interventions. Now they also know that there is such a thing as mental health issues, and they will create this program with their parents. I just want to highlight that I fully support that.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may say a few words. Yes, Mr. President, this was exactly what our experts suggested, that it should be a learner-centered, as well as parents should be consulted on what program should be implemented in our schools. Because they don't want a scenario wherein it will be a top-down approach where all the programs comes from the central office.
Yes.
It will be just fed to our schools. But our schools will have different situations. Our learners themselves have are in different situations. So that's the reason why they suggested that the program should be inclusive and participative and localized. Especially the members will be from parents and school members, Mr. President. So that is the reason behind why we included this sentence, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I commend His Honor because I think that is the best approach. And of course, like His Honor says, he relies on the experts for this. Mr. President, on the same paragraph, but this time on line 25, it says the DepEd shall likewise implement complementary measures that enable other associated healthy behaviors among learners and eliminate the stigma on mental health counseling. What is that supposed to mean? Itong other associated healthy behaviors. Ano ba yung other associated? You mean the idea of let's say having a mental health club? Yun ba yun? Yun ba yung associated healthy behaviors? Or like, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to know.
Yeah. Mr. President, I recall that the discussion here is I think the good gentle lady from Taguig made a very good example about sports. No?
Yes. Is
and-
this
and
it?
This is
It's one.
actually it's one of the examples, Mr. President, because
Okay.
in terms of mental health should not be approached in terms of reaction. You have to be proactive. And the discussion during the hearing and technical working group is DepEd should come up with other activities that will promote healthy behavior so that students will not have issues down the road on mental health, Mr. President. So activities such as sports,
Yes.
such as extracurricular activities, Mr. President, positive reinforcement, this type of activities, Mr. President.
So, Your Honor, I will submit language to that effect because I believe the sponsor and I are on the same page exactly on this, but I think it's the word behavior is not exactly accurate because it took His Honor surprisingly about 30 seconds to explain. So that means I'm pretty sure His Honor, I'm trying to read His Honor's mind that perhaps behavior is not exactly the right word. I think, and this is not yet my proposal, but I'm thinking the wording would be something like that DepEd shall likewise implement complementary measures that promote healthy behaviors. And what would be these complementary measures? Yun nga po, yung mga programs on sports,
Yeah.
on peer bonding and so on and so forth. So if His Honor will indulge
we're
me,
open to-
I'll submit this wording. 'Cause
Yes,
I-
Mr.
yeah.
President, we're very open to improving the bill, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that.
So we'll move on to the next. We're already on section 5. And this is on the care center. May I know from His Honor, because we have had multiple discussions on this, ito ho bang the creation of a center in every public basic education school that shall be equipped with functional physical facilities. Is this progressive realization? Because
Yes,
as
Mr. President, you were not President Minority Leader
I-
exactly asked me that
Yes.
question.
No, to be honest, Your Honor, I overheard it. I'm not sure if I heard it in the lounge or while walking, but I heard the term. So I said, mukhang covered naman.
Yes, and
But is
one
it
of the
clear?
yes, Mr. President, one of the concepts that I learned from Her Honor is the term progressive realization, and in
Okay.
fact, that concept has been applied in many of
In
the
many
proposed
of
proposed
many-
measure.
on this bill.
I think
Okay.
that is a much more realistic and a much more I think a much more realistic track to fully implement the law, Mr. President.
And may I know, Your Honor, well, in the laws that we have passed with this same provision, and of course, its relevance to this bill, can our progressive realization include ideal setups in certain schools? So that would already be your ano ba tawag yun when we have pocket, doon tayo lalagay ng kompleto. Ano ba yun? Pilot. They would be the pilots, no? So that it's not a progressive realization where all over the country 5%, all over the country 10%. Like we'll have a few key cities where you have very supportive local government officials, and then they have maybe 50%, 75, 100% realization in 2 to 3 years. Then the others can see, ay, ito pala yun. Because let's be honest, I don't know what country can claim that they've perfected this, right? So it's work in progress, and we have to adapt our own style. So can that be done, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. President, I think it's a good idea. As long as they conduct a needs analysis in their
Yes.
area. For example, based on their needs analysis and based on their consultation, kids are encountering difficulty in their area, then they have to put a care center that will be staffed with mental health specialists. And that setup can be a model setup for other schools to emulate, Mr. President.
And perhaps, Your Honor, is it in the bill that programs that are low-hanging fruits, in other words, program that already exists for other reasons, but which directly contribute to this bill on mental health in the school-based setting, are assessed so that without having to do anything else, there's an assessment. Like, in other words, I'll be very precise with my example. There are schools with robust sports programs, if they were to assess the mental health of the student athletes in various programs, yung bang non-competitive, yung for fun lang, PE, for fun, sports, and then very competitive athletes versus none. So parang you have 3 control groups. None, no sports, recreational sports, and competitive sports, and check the mental health of all. Then you already know na, oh, it looks like, because I can already tell you the answer. I'm pretty sure those engaged in recreational sports will have pretty good mental health. I mean, barring other circumstances, no, that's why nga it has to be controlled studies. And then those engaged in competitive sports, there may be some that are doing great, and there may be some that are pressured for whatever reason. But there are already studies that show that anyone who runs, running, so 3 control groups, Your Honor. No running, only medication, and then running and medication, and running only. Guess which person has the best mental health outcome? The running only even exceeded the running and medication. So, and I'm not making that up. That's science, no? Because as a runner, I've always felt that going to my time by myself, my time to run really helped, because you produce endorphins, which makes you feel good. So yung ganun ba, we don't have to reinvent it, Your Honor. We already know that it's good for you. It gives you self-esteem. So baka they can already make those studies to see how these kids are faring, and then hindi na kailangan paggastusan ng kung ano-ano pang studies, Your Honor, di ba?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. I get it from Her Honor that she wants to include in the bill that DepEd should look at existing programs and
Yes.
existing studies.
So DepEd should look at existing programs that are known to contribute to mental health. So,
Yes.
like I said, these peer groups that we talked about, there are existing
And best
programs.
practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sports, even though it wasn't created to address mental health program, it was created for physical health, but may effect yun.
Yeah.
So they can already look at that's the science. They can already look at how the kids are thriving, so that it's also a way of convincing parents and education, the principals and all na we're not just mandating it. It's proven. These kids fare better. They're happier. They're able to cope. I know for a fact, and there are also studies that people can cope better with their mental health issues when yun nga, they have a peer group or they have a sport that takes them away from their problems, gives them something to parang binubuhos nila yung oras nila and attention nila dun sa sports nila and it takes it away from their problems.
I'm
Science
amenable-
na yun, Your Honor. Eh.
Yeah, I'm amenable to that, Mr. President, and it's good to look at those best practices, if I can call them, so that there's already evidence that those type of approaches do actually work and is being implemented in other areas, Mr. President. Yes, I'm amenable to the concept, Mr. President.
Oh, Mr. President, my staff is pointing out to me that in the declaration of policy, it says there that the state shall aim to achieve the following main objectives: institutionalize an effective and efficient school-based mental health program, and strengthen the existing mental health and guidance and counseling programs. But for me, Your Honor, that is very specific to existing mental health and guidance counseling programs. I take that as one line. These are not yet the other programs that effectively contribute to mental health. That's what I'm saying. So, if His Honor can just give us time to, again, insert that phrase in the right
Yes,
place.
Mr. President.
Yes, thank you.
Conceptually, I agree to, I'm amenable to that proposal, Mr. President.
And I think that might be it, Your Honor. Just let me double check Section 7. Yeah, I just have a comment, Your Honor, no, for Section 7, localized multi-tier roadmap. Is this really necessary, Your Honor? I mean, I think children basically have similar issues. In every school setting, there will be a child who's a victim of violence in their own homes. Meron yan kahit saan. So, student A may not have the same condition as student B, may not have the same condition as student C. But in that whole classroom, marireplicate naman din yun sa iba. Unless, of course, there was a trauma in that area. They are victims of a natural calamity. So then they all need interventions, obviously, dahil namatayan ng mahal sa buhay, pati yung aso nila namatay, kalabaw nila namatay. You have to intervene on a community-wide basis. But to ask every school to develop localized multi-year school-based program, parang hindi naman, Your Honor. Kasi I feel like the issues of a child would be the same. So either may abusive relationship, may pressure siya in school to perform. Hindi ho ba? Parang, can I just be educated on why the need for that?
Well, Mr. President, this is a very important discussion, and I remember we spent a long time discussing this. The experts are recommending that in coming up with the program and the roadmap, it has to be localized in a sense that different schools will have different needs, and different learners will also encounter different situations, Mr. President. And they discourage a one-size-fits-all / top-down approach in terms of program. It has to be a bottom-up wherein parents, even learners are consulted in coming up with a program. And depending on the gravity of the need, like for example, Mr. President, I remember one of the discussions internally is, for example, the siege in Marawi, wherein it was widespread, and the level of atrocities is quite high, and of course the children are exposed to a different type of trauma, no,
Yeah.
in that sense.
Yeah.
So that type of scenario should be captured in the localized program,
Correct.
and should be captured in the roadmap depending on the gravity of that location, Mr. President.
No,
So,
and Your Honor, if His Honor recalls, just as I posed this question, I said, Of course, if there's a natural calamity, and I use natural calamity, what happened to Marawi is not a natural calamity. It's a man-made, extremely painful experience that the locals went through. But barring those, no, like community-wide experiences that affected everyone's mental health. I'm not a health professional. I am a mother, though, and I know that the problems of children, I mean, you can more or less determine that there will be somebody with a family problem at home, right? There will be a child who's growing up without a mother, OFW abroad, baka without a father for the same reason, maybe with a basagulero or mang-iinom na father, right? So I mean, what I'm saying, Your Honor, is it's not difficult to identify the kind of pressures of the child. Does His Honor follow so far?
Yeah.
That is not difficult. What I don't want to happen is we spend so much time. Alam naman natin, Mr. President, that these teachers are already overworked, di ba? So I'm just saying that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I note that in the same section 7, on line 4, it says here, provided that
Yes.
all roadmaps shall be crafted, taking into consideration a general
Right.
framework to be provided by DepEd. To me, I think that's where you start. Unless nga, there was a community-based major occurrence there that has a different effect on yung sa Yolanda. Wow, that changes how these children view the future, right? It's a war-torn area. It changes how the children. So definitely the intervention there maybe starts with that, major factor. But all I'm saying is, hindi naman nila kailangan alamin yung sitwasyon ng bawat bata to determine that we need to know how to support this child if they have problems at home, right? That's all I'm saying naman, Your Honor.
Yeah, Mr. President, that's why the concept here is there will be a general framework because the
Yes,
concepts
I
across the
think-
country is,
Yes.
like you said, no, more or less the same, but there will be nuances
Of course.
on the ground.
Of course.
And that's where the localization of the roadmap, localization of the programs will come in, Mr. President. But the general framework is there, Mr.
Yeah.
President, so that they will not start from scratch and develop
Yes.
a hodgepodge of programs in different schools.
So
Mr.
just
President.
with his Honor's body language, ganun din ako. The general framework
Yes,
is there.
Mr.
So with his permission, I think I might propose language where we say that the general framework is there, and then you immediately identify if there are cultural or man-made or natural environmental intervention that have to be taken into consideration to modify these general situations that affect children. Because no matter what I read, they are very similar. Tapos may specific trauma nga. Kung,
Yeah.
kunyari, yung nabasa ko lang nung isang araw, ang lungkot, Your Honor, refugees from Ethiopia were being shot by Saudi Arabia forces because they were entering. So if you're a child and you're a survivor of that, wow, that has to be considered. So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I may just provide language because alam niyo na, Your Honor, pag hinimay natin yung budget, tas malalaman natin, kasi ginagawa pa to, yung ganun, parang, no, you can start with some general framework naman.
Yeah.
Yun lang naman po.
Yeah, Mr. President, I think we're on the same page that there's a general framework that cuts across the entire country, but the program and the roadmap should be localized to the extent that it deals with the need of the school and, of course, the nuances of the mental health situation of the learners, Mr. President. I think we're in unison in that concept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honor. And then something very close to my heart, Section 8, Your Honor, on the creation of new plantilla positions. If His Honor will recall, I would say maybe 4 years ago, or maybe even earlier, that's when we, in one budget hearing, at least on my end, that's when we discovered that this, actually, no, I think it was when I was chairman of the Committee on Education, so that would have been between 2013 to 2016, so almost 10 years ago, when we discovered that the position for guidance counselor is it has a very low paying, it's a very low paying position, and then the requirement for that position is a master's degree. No, we've discussed this already. Just put it on record so
Correct,
those
Mr.
following can understand. So and His Honor and I were both very concerned about this. And so when I look at Section 8 now, is it correct? Is my understanding correct that this guidance counselor now with a master's degree will now hold salary grade 16?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is the amendment we're making to address.
Yes,
that.
master's degree and a license
Yes, yes.
holder, Mr. President. Yeah,
Yes.
correct, Mr. President. That's
And-
the request of the guidance counselors as
Yes.
well as the mental health specialists that participated in the discussion, Mr. President.
And itong mental health associate were positions that did not exist before. So
Yes,
we're
Mr.
creating
President.
that.
Correct.
And I congratulate His Honor for doing this because once and for all, we took note of a problem. It's not something we could have changed easily, but we now, with the time that His Honor has taken really dissecting this, we now created 5. This is 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, tama
Yes.
ba? 5.
Correct, Mr.
5
President.
different layers. So we now created that career path, Your Honor.
Correct.
Congratulations. So they can move on. Kasi sa totoo lang, marami dito, mapapirate din. Mapapirate din sa ibang bansa, mapapirate din ng private companies. But at least for those who are dedicated, who want to serve their country, who want to work with children, they have this option now. May career path sila. Tama?
And correct, and that's where the return service will also come into
Yes.
play, because definitely this type of professionals are in demand, not only abroad, but also I found out that a lot of our, let's say, social workers, they work in NGOs, in multilateral organizations, so not only in specific governments, but to NGOs. No? So, yes, Mr. President, this is to address the shortage in terms of mental health practitioners in our school system. And hopefully, with this increase in salary, we can attract more to come in and take these courses, Mr. President.
Yes, my staff has a very good question, Your Honor. If you recall, guidance counselors do handle yung guidance nga, no? So career paths, 'di ba? What course they'll study, because especially now with the different tracks, no? I think it becomes more relevant because there's somehow earlier than later they have to make decisions on the tracks, or at least their interests and talents have to be identified. When we say that all existing, so I'm now on page 7, line 1. This is still part of Section 8. When we say all existing plantilla positions of guidance counselors and psychologists in the DepEd shall be converted to mental health specialist plantilla positions, paano na yung counseling on career path? Is that still the job of a mental health specialist? Or can we expand their title to be sure that we didn't leave that behind?
Well, Mr. President, the guidance counselor perform counseling and career guidance, Mr. President. So,
But they're now called mental health specialists.
They
So
will
it
be
seems
called-
different, Your Honor.
they will be called mental health specialists, Mr. President. But they perform those roles in their school, Mr. President.
But for me, Your Honor, just listening to the term mental health, I don't think that covers career counseling. So I would like His Honor to take a look at it and help us. Just take a look at it again and see if we could call them mental health specialists and because medyo iba yun eh.
Yeah. Let me review this, Mr. President. I am asking my staff to pull the counseling.
Because Your Honor, if you look at the law on guidance counseling, there is a definition of what guidance and counseling as a profession is. And I don't
Yeah.
think it is very similar, but probably not exactly aligned. No, I know. Thank you. Oh, yun. Ayun na lang. Tapos, be ready.
Yeah, but that's the same. But the profession is guidance counselor. For this one. Kasi guidance counselor rin siya. Career trained assistant. Ah, okay. Assisted lang siya. So who would perform this function? Who would perform? School head ba?
Ayun, sa section 5 din po, to be headed by the school administrator who shall be assisted by the guidance counselor.
Well, Mr. President, in RA 11206, this is an act establishing a career guidance and counseling program for all secondary schools and appropriating funds therefore. In Section 5, there shall be established a CGCP center in all secondary school to be headed by the school administrator who shall be assisted by a trained career and employment guidance counselor, Mr. President. So the head will still be the school administrator, but the person who will assist will be the guidance counselor, Mr. President.
Yes, but based on this bill, you eradicated the position of guidance counselor. It's now a mental health specialist. So there's a little bit of, for me, there's a little bit of confusion. Does that guidance counselor still exist? Because you're now defining a mental health associate and a mental health specialist. And for some of those specialists and associates, they're not necessarily guidance counselors. So, and the section 8 now says all existing plantilla positions shall be converted. It's not, if it's just a plantilla position, I don't have a problem with that. You know, like all existing guidance counselors shall now receive plantilla position 16, 17, etc. But if you're now going to call them mental health specialists, I think there's a change in what their scope of work is. We can, anyway, I have a few
Yeah,
amendments
yeah.
to be submitted. Would His Honor like to table this and,
Yeah,
and
I
that can
get-
be part of the discussion among our staff to
Yeah.
clarify it? So
I get the
because of
the
time.
point of the gentle lady from Taguig. I see your point here. Let me review this law again and see how it will
How it's
harmonize.
affected.
Yeah,
Yes.
how it will harmonize with the proposed bill, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, Your Honor, that's basically it. We will submit probably 2 or 3 amendments only, just to clarify the points we raised. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And I do value the suggestions of His Honor. Every time she gives suggestion, it sharpens the bill and clarifies a lot of the provisions that might lead to confusion in the future. So thank you very much, Senator Pia. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pia. Session suspended.